Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Brent, welcome to Consulting Leaders.
Thank you for having me on. Honored to be here.
It is my great pleasure. It's not every time and every day that I get to talk to someone who launched his first business at age 10. So what's behind all this and what got you into consulting, Brent?
Yeah, well, I would just start out saying my parents were in business for themselves. So for us growing up, the kitchen table also passed for the boardroom for the family business. So I was exposed to it from early on. And I mean, I was in on mowing lawns, and first it was just a couple of neighbors, and then there were lots of opportunities to expand, and then doing a whole subdivision. And my family quickly said, look, if you're going to do this, then start setting it up like a real business, and you're going to have to submit bids and do those type of things. So very early on, I had that opportunity to grow it and, learn what it's like to try and hire someone to do your job while you go on vacation and have that not work out, and all those type of things that are fun when you grow and learn. So really from an early age, I don't know, it just seemed like the way you do things. And that came from a family background.
I like the origin story. That's what we do in the family. What's the problem that you solve now? What is it that, you help people achieve?
That's an excellent question. We help people continue on the growth trajectory by transforming their existing business so they can upgrade, because we find that growth businesses need to upgrade in order to continue growing. That we start with one model, it works really well until it doesn't work. And usually most owners are so focused on the thing that they do that it's difficult for them to see the pieces they need to continue to upgrade from a business standpoint in order to continue unleashing those amazing skills they have at the next level.
Who do you help specifically? Like, do you have a particular job title, niche, industry, company size?
Ours tends to focus on company size. So I'd say up to $50 million in revenue. So you have to be started and established. So usually we're a baseline, not much lower than $1 million of revenue or 5 employees. So we say 1 to 50 million in revenue, 5 to 250 employees. That's really a spot where we like to focus. And we focus there because there are lots of growth stages that happen along the way that require the business to transform. I think once you start getting larger than that, you start bringing in more professional C-suite organization folks. You get the CFO, you get the CMO, but these tend to be amazing entrepreneurs who may have managers, may have people who are expert in their category, but they don't have a strong executive team. And as a result, we come alongside and provide that additional support and guidance, along with giving them a boost of confidence and a place to focus. Because everyone says there's 100 things you need to fix about your business. We boil it down to 3 because we only want the most important next 3 to do.
So how do you market to get the attention of those people? Because obviously, I mean, everybody wants to get a hold of, the C-suite and the decision makers of $5 to $50 million companies. So what has worked for you to get those leads to know? First of all, who's the decision maker? Is it the same as the person you end up working with, or is it someone different?
The decision maker tends to be the business owner. We have had experience with a variety of others, and in the end, it either goes to the business owner or the chief or the CEO, depending on how they're organized. But even if we're mainly going to work with someone in maybe a senior executive role, it always seems to bounce through the owner or the CEO. So that's one piece. How do we get in front of those people? Marketing is all about going through the know, like, trust process. So we spent a lot of time out there networking. We spent a lot of time identifying companies we would like to work with, and then asking the people who are big advocates of ours, saying, hey, do you know this person? Can you get us an intro to this person? How do we get in front of them? Where are they going to be? And then we focus on building relationships. For what we do in business in particular, because we interact with people's finances, a lot of people would talk about a lot of personal items in their life before they want to talk about money and how they handle money in particular. So for us, we really have to have a pretty heavy focus on, it's not just one discussion and, hey, are you willing to hire us? It's a long-term, engagement. And we do that in a variety of ways with the one-on-ones. And that's part of where we do the podcast and the workshops and our heavy LinkedIn presence and YouTube as well, in order to really make an impact and a difference.
Talk to me about the podcast. How do you use that to attract the right people? How do you use it in your marketing mix?
It's a great question. I started the podcast originally because I felt like there's so much we can learn from other business owners who are just a little bit ahead of wherever we're at and wherever we're going. And as I was working with so many entrepreneurs, originally my first role, I had the opportunity to just work with a lot of people who were coming in, oftentimes for just one-off or two-visit type of, I have this particular challenge I need to overcome, before we developed a more holistic model that said, look, there's a longer engagement that's going to be more beneficial in the long run. But there were so many great ideas, and I found like I was sharing the same story over and over and over. And I said, you guys need to hear the stories of these people. And then it is incumbent on me to highlight, you've heard, like we're doing now, a half-hour-long interview. How do we boil that down and help you focus on just the pieces that we've seen so many businesses be challenged by? What we have the opportunity to do is not just releasing the podcast. It turns into a lot of YouTube shorts. It turns into a lot of LinkedIn content for us. And for us, that has really driven a lot in that know, like, trust process. I run across people I've never met before, but they tell me, I see your content on LinkedIn all the time. So that's already crossing that no, and hopefully crossing some of that like barrier, because they're trying to bring our personality. The shirts are showing up all the time and the humor is showing up all the time. So that's an aspect that we use to really round it out. And then we've also, with some clients, said, we have an episode on that. I want you to listen to this particular segment, because sometimes hearing it from us as the consultants isn't the same as hearing it from another business leader. So, like, don't take my word for it. Listen to what Angela has to say, for example.
Okay, you hit me on my sweet spot here. So I want to double down a bit on it. So, as you very accurately said, I want to focus on my guests' experience and what they do and how they do it and how do they make it work, which is why we don't often talk about how to podcast specifically on the show, at least, to help with the growth of a B2B business. So, talking to entrepreneurs, that's one. Content repurposing, that's two. We're going to get into this. Three is using it as a middle of funnel asset, right? Like, hey, we started this conversation, or even a client, like, hey, I have a great episode on this, recorded with someone like you, who talks about the things that you care about and that was facing the same challenge as you. Go ahead and listen to it. Why do you think podcast is such a good channel for this? I mean, I don't know if you think it's such a good channel for it. I do, so I don't want to bias you. But why using podcasts and not, YouTube, or like speaking conferences, or just connecting people via email? Why this channel, and how do you make it work, Brent?
So one of the ways you can promote your business, one of the key channels you can focus on, is being a subject matter expert. So if you want to be a subject matter expert, you're absolutely right. It becomes middle of the funnel. Someone may just be like, I don't know, I'm going to randomly Google entrepreneurs and telling their stories. And does someone have that? Well, Entrepreneur Encounters may show up in that search. It is more powerful for us, though, when we are using it, when you've already started down that know, like, and trust scale, to be able to introduce it. You're right. Both the prospects, which we have, to say, look, we have an episode about that. And also to make sure that you are demonstrating in a different way that you can convey that material. I think sending people to YouTube is awesome. I also think going to conferences are awesome, but we still spend a lot of time out walking the dog, driving behind the car, and those are primarily going to be audio-based experiences. And yes, I can listen to a YouTube and not do the video, but I think the advent of podcasts taking off with the way we've changed how we work, that, I can walk around with the headphones in or headphones on, or listen to the speaker in the car, and still continue to consume information. So I think if you don't have that in your mix, you're missing out on an opportunity to continue to get in front of their audience. When they're multitasking, that's great. They're walking around, they're driving, but they're still consuming information. And can you be in there in some way, shape, or form, providing value?
All right, this is gold. Thanks a lot for sharing this, Brent. I want to double down on just on a few things. Because I think this is so valuable, and hopefully this will help some of the people listening to us. So here's the thing about podcasting for B2B coach or consultants. First off, there is the guests, right? So the relationships that you build with the guests, with people within your industry, is invaluable. Like, your business is literally to have conversations with people, and that's what you do. So that's number one. Number two is, if you position the podcast properly, now not only are you talking to people in your niche, you're also talking about stuff that your potential clients care about. You're positioning the content towards them, like, hey, this is a podcast where we talk about the entrepreneurs encounters, to name yours, Brent. This is something that, this is a podcast where we talk about the stuff that you care about together with people like you. Now, the content is much more relevant to your niche. Third, I don't know of a better tool, and maybe there are, but that's why we love podcasts. I don't know of a better tool to repurpose tons of content out of a 45-minute conversation. You mentioned a few, but I'm going to double down on these, Brent. There is the audio episode, obviously, that goes live on the podcast platforms. There is the video episode, long form, that goes live on YouTube. 1 billion monthly podcast users, by the way. You might want to tap into that. You don't need even a lot, 2-3 snippets out of each and every episode of less than 1 minute that you publish on all the 6 social media platforms. Now you have 18 pieces of content per episode. You can do a newsletter edition. You can do an SEO optimized article out of it. You can do a trailer. Now, out of 1, maybe 2 episodes per week, you're getting a whole content strategy for your whole company. And then there is the audience and the brand that you build as you go, authority, trust, and using it as a middle of asset tool. In case it doesn't show, I'm enthusiastic about podcast. What else? What else do you do, Brent? So there is the podcast. You mentioned a couple of other things. What are those?
So we're doing YouTube Shorts. We do also post the full content. We do heavy on LinkedIn because we are primarily a B2B platform. That is where we choose to spend the vast majority of our time. And that's where we've developed the biggest following, the biggest traction. And I think are generating, like I said, people know us because they see us posting a lot. And I don't think we're out there, spamming the platform. I think we have thoughtful content that the platform does a good job serving up to the people that are relevant to us. And honestly, I would add one more, which I think is related, making sure you're making social posts even on business platforms. And I'm not talking about, silly, here's what I have for my spaghetti, but I went to this networking event. I met these people. Here's my photos with my selfies doing the people and a few shots of whatever. Those actually tend to get the highest engagement of all because sort of people like seeing themselves in different environments. And because they're engaging, they're going to get some of the other content that we're putting out, which is some of the subject matter expertise that we want them to be like, you know what? Whether they're hiring us directly or they have someone coming to them, we want to say MKE Business Coach is the one you need to talk to about this issue.
Absolutely love this. Amen. How do you move from this to a conversation, a sales conversation, an SOW, a letter of engagement? What does sales motion look like for you, Brent?
When we have a conversation, we can start to dig into what is the problem as the client is experiencing it. And then we start to look at what does a solution look like? What does it look like to relieve some of that pain and some of that challenge? For us, we like to work with owners to translate what they do every day into financial numbers. For a lot of people, there's a gap between the activity they take and the results that show up financially. So we help bridge that gap because that's a way that we end up thinking. We help provide business leaders with streamline their priorities and provide accountability. People who are great at doing their thing didn't necessarily want to become a manager. They needed to become a manager, but they don't know how to be a manager. So those are places we're going to help. And then we really work hard to get people's expectations realigned through process improvements because there's things they hope to be able to do and expect to be able to do, but the business isn't designed that way. So those are some of the pieces that we really focus heavily on. And when we do it by asking a lot of questions, demonstrating a lot of empathy, which sometimes I think is missing in our consultancy field, and then proposing some solutions. And hopefully we've gone, again, now long enough down that know, like, trust process that we ask for the permission to be able to make a proposal. Would it be all right if I gave you a proposal on what would be helpful to help your business? And when someone says yes, there's a high likelihood of getting that conversion. And it's because you've taken the time to do the pre-work. We've tried some different a little more like, let's try and fire out earlier in that know, like, trust process and see if we can just spray and pray and see if we get more conversions. And it hasn't been a successful model for us. And again, I think it's because the depth which we're going to go with the leaders and the challenges they're facing, it's going to take a little more relationship for them to be willing to open the book and develop a relationship that lasts 6 to 12 months, or hopefully longer, into 18 to 24, than just a one and done engagement, which takes almost the same amount of marketing work, but just frankly yields less results for them, and less enduring revenue for us.
How do you go for? So I love that. That makes a lot of sense. And one of the partners back in my PwC days, who taught me everything I know about consulting, he was like, Guillaume, there are two types of consultants. There are the hunters and there are the farmers. It's not good or bad. It's just two different approaches. And he was like, I'm a hunter. I love the smell of fresh blood in the morning. I love to go after new business. That's my jam. And he was like, but the partners who bring in the most money, the most successful ones, the ones who grow the fastest, are the farmers, the ones who are able to take that initial engagement, over-deliver, transform it into a multi-year, multi-layered project involving other teams from the firm. Like those are the ones who bring in the most money. How do you farm, Brent?
I think this is where some of our initial workshops and other offerings can help. They are designed as a one-stop standalone, but they serve two critical purposes for us. One, we're clearly conveying our subject matter expertise, and we're able to identify some additional opportunities. Additional problems get surfaced that are not being addressed. And that allows us then to transition to that next conversation to say, I know we talked about goal setting, for instance, and I think there's an additional opportunity with a longer term engagement, not only to just set goals, but how about achieving goals? Like, I don't really like goal setting workshops. Anyone can set a goal. I'd rather see people achieve their efforts. But in order to do that, in order to achieve your efforts, you're going to have to put in some other processes. So that's an example of expanding that. And I think if you're listening as you're going along, spend a quarterly reevaluation. This is what we've done. This is where we're going. And here's some new opportunities that we've established. Is that something that you want to address now? Because not every problem that you find is something that can be addressed. Remember, I said you start with 100. We're really just focusing on 3. And some new and critical opportunities may show up that you're just shaking your head at. And you're like, you should have led with that one. Not 6 months in, you should have led with that one, because that's actually the biggest problem for your business. And if you've developed rapport, you've earned the right to be able to have the conversation to say, I think we should fold this into the project.
Amen to that. Do you have specific milestones, mechanism, should I say, that allow you to, take it to the next level each and every time? Can you speak a bit to that?
That is, that's a little bit tricky. One model that we use a lot, we call it our V-Ghost. We didn't invent it, but it's vision, goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics. And it helps us take where people are trying to go and make sure that we're answering some key questions. Who's going to get it? Who's going to get it done? When are we doing? What are we trying to achieve? How are we going to get there? Those type of things. And why are we even going this direction? Does it even fit where our business is going? As we continue to break those down, you start finding questions that don't have all those pieces filled out, things that the business wanted to do that aren't happening. So that's sort of our trigger check-in when we can ask about that. And you start getting, this is what we want to do, but we have no idea how to get there. And certainly no one's assigned to actually do that work. And definitely we don't have a deadline. It's like, okay, well, I'll keep that in hold. And again, as we focus on where the pieces we're clearing, as you start to see some resolution, that's the time to bring a new one up, because now we're putting one project to bed. From 3, I'm now down to 2 items we're tackling. We're going to try and introduce another third one in there to keep focus on continual improvement. One of the challenges in our business, there's 3 phases that we can really bring value. The first phase shows up very rapidly. There's money lying on the floor, because you show up and you're like, have you ever thought about doing X, Y, and Z? And everyone's just like, brilliant. Thank you. I just didn't see it because the forest and the trees effect. Let me start implementing that right now and I'll save money. Great. If you stop there, you made a little bit of money. But the next step is to start getting some of those processes that take a little bit more time to dig in. We need more data. We got to really understand what's going on with the people. And you go, aha, this process is broken. Let's fix that one. The final stage, though, is when you're really starting to reorganize the whole operation. to say it was designed to work this, and it works well up to about $5 million, but you find you're not doing a very good job delegating. You're going to have to change how you do management. You're going to change how you empower your people. You're going to automate, et cetera. That's a longer term engagement. We want to be able to move successfully through all three, and you have to continue to provide value, but you have to change how you approach that with the client, because the outcome and the expectation of success have to change. It's no longer as instantaneous. It's going to take sustained effort, usually from them and you as the consultant, in order to see that change really materialize. But that is where the true value is. That's what makes a $5 million business a $10 million business a couple of years down the road.
Amen to that. You're nailing it. You're using some marketing channels that I like a lot. Nailed sales process, retention strategy makes sense to me. I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball question at you, Brent, if that's all right.
Make it happen.
What's your number one challenge right now? What's the one nut that you're trying to crack that, once you crack, you're going to take the whole thing to the next level? What would that be for you?
I think the biggest challenge is managing the ebb and flow in workload. So we have set up a strategy we understand the balance between the doing, like our highest and best use is we're out there both building relationships and doing the high valued work. So there's pieces we already know how to offload, but as the client volume goes up, the tendency is, do I go out there a little bit less? Do we market a little bit less? I have a great marketing friend who said, marketing is like food. You can stop eating for a while and you will still live. Eventually it'll really take a toll, and you'll find it'll take you a while to get it back again. So the greatest challenge is balancing the workload when client demand really peaks. And there are some clients who are very project based, and when they're busy, they need a lot of time, and that's time you got to focus. And then when it shifts, how do you integrate people into that flow? So it has been a workflow reinvention as we've continued to grow our own business. Just like we tell our clients, we have pieces in our process that we have to reinvent. So that is probably the biggest challenge that we look at on a regular basis, and then figuring out how do you manage that and how do you make it work in the way that we choose to manage our business, because there are lots of ways to grow, but you also have to look at, do you want to grow? Is this how you want to grow? And what's going to be most effective for the lifestyle that you're ultimately looking to live?
Yeah, the feast and famine cycle is quite a common one. How are you thinking about solving it? Like, because it's always the same, right? You're knees deep into delivery. You want to deliver an exceptional work, which is what also allows you to get more engagements from the same clients or referral. But at the same time, 6 months down the line, when the project eventually ends, because the whole point of a consultant is also to at some point fire ourselves. And now, because no marketing or less marketing has been done, the pipeline hasn't been nurtured and maintained, it's like we run after biz dev, and now we are knees deep in biz dev. How are you thinking about solving this? I'm asking Brent because that's a common issue. I think it's always interesting to understand, how your peers are thinking about problems that you're facing yourself right now. And we will have people listening to us who are in this situation. So how are you thinking about solving this?
I think the first thing you have to do is you have to figure out about time management, not in the way I think though many people think about time management. I think, I don't know how much people are really truly leveraging AI in their business, but how many things are you doing that are still more efficient to be on your plate, but could be 3 times faster because you really figure out how to use AI well for it? I mentioned the Vigos model that we did. AI with a combination of like transcripts from coaching sessions, input that you can dialogue, speak to it. It can actually, and then you give it the good parameters of like, this is what I want the output to look at. We'll produce a 80% run at that in like 5% of the time it would take you to type it all out and think about it and how do you want to sort it, et cetera. Then you add your high value and just sort and be like, nah, that's not quite it. I think this is it. But now I'm going to tweak around the edges, but I got 80%. So how much are you leveraging other tools to get you the 80%? Because your expertise shouldn't be spending getting to the 80%. It should be going from 80 to 95 plus. The more you can do of that, you are creating time that you didn't used to have before. This is whatever, the advent of the typewriter, the word processor, all those things that really started changing how in an email, right? How we changed how we communicate and how we work. I think that's probably the biggest piece, that there are little nuggets of time basically that you're still doing essentially analog. How do you transform those? Because now, instead of saying, I would really like to get to that networking event, but I got to do this one thing and get this out for a client. How do you make that a 5-minute exercise? So it's like, that's done and I can still go to the event or still go meet with coffee for that person. The other part that I think is just truly essential is you have to decide what is non-negotiable for you. No matter how busy you're going to get, this is an event you're going to show up to every month because that group meets, and that group's a great source both for building into you and for getting referrals and for potentially direct sales contacts. Well, block your calendar and live by it.
Amen to that. On the other side of the coin, what's a big opportunity that you're looking forward to work on in the next 3 to 6 months? You cannot say AI, obviously. What's something you're enthusiastic about?
I think the biggest opportunity is how, for us, we are really looking at transforming. 12 months is probably a reasonable engagement. How do we provide the value that is an 18 to 24 month gain? Because as I mentioned before, the time it takes to land a client for a brief one-time project workshop may be about the same as it could take someone to land them for 2 years. So how do we codify the process of continuing to demonstrate that you provide value? Because I think as consultants, it's not that we stop providing value, it's that there's a familiarity effect and maybe our clients stop feeling the value increase. And it's part of our job to resell what we're already doing. Hey, this is where we started. This is where we're going. This is what we're achieving. This is what we're getting. These are the new opportunities to go. To the degree we get sort of complacent and just become sort of part of the team and just become a doer, someday they may look at that and be like, why am I about to cut this next check for this next month or send this ACH out or however, do the credit card charge, however the payments are coming, right? Because they've lost sight of the value where we can see it, but we've forgotten to tell our client. I think that's a huge transformation because going from 12-month to 24-month with a single lifetime value of a customer, and that's not necessarily a lifetime, but let's just take that as an average. You just doubled your opportunity from everyone you land.
Amen to that. Brent, ladies and gentlemen, Brent, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
Yeah. You can look us up, Brent Halfwassen or Kate Halfwassen. We're active on LinkedIn, as we've said. Check out our website, mkebusinesscoach.com. We post a lot of content there and a lot of information. A lot of these cuts that we're talking about that come out of our interviews and things that will also be posted on YouTube, you'll be able to find there, and relevant content we're putting out. Look us up, send us a note. We'd be happy to engage with you and see how we can help your business grow to the next level.
We'll put all the links in the description. What I can say for sure is that you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn out of this interview, Brent. Me, I just added you. Thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
I love it. Honored to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.